Hello. It's good to be with you guys this morning. I feel like me and Abigail have been all over the place this fall. So it's good to feel like I haven't been here in a while. So don't take it personal. Happy to be here though. So I feel like anytime I talk about Young Life, I say a similar spiel. So hopefully this does not feel overly redundant. And maybe if you've never heard it, here we go. Young Life exists to introduce adolescents to Jesus Christ and help them grow in their faith. Young Life is an international organization. It's been around for over 80 years now. It's existed in Delaware, Ohio for around 30 years, with a lot of fun, kind of rich history, especially at Buckeye Valley High School in the 90s and early 2000s. What we like to say is that we're an incarnational ministry. So when we think about John chapter 1, talks about Jesus is the Word was God, that Jesus always existed. It's a beautiful passage. And then John 1:14 says, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. Talking about how Jesus stepped out of heaven into earth to be with us, ultimately to rescue us from our sin, but to be like us and become like us. Philippians 2 talks about how Jesus humbled himself and found himself in human form, humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. So this humility that Jesus stepped out of his place of power and divinity in the heavenly realms and stepped into the earth. And ultimately, I think he invites us into living that way too, that we would step out of our comfort zones and into the world of sin and brokenness. And he does that with us. And so for us in Young Life, we try to live that out of showing up in the lives of kids in the midst of sin and brokenness, thinking of showing up in the middle of school and just being there where, stuff is weird and messy. And we try to meet kids where they're at in the same way that Jesus meets us where we're at. And so some of that is showing up at the end of the school day at dismissal when it lets out, or showing up hanging around the student section during football games, which is weird because I'm not young anymore. So it's funny, people are like, Freeze, what are you doing? I'm like, great question, but I think I'm supposed to be here. I think that that's what we do. And ultimately it's just relationships and building relationships with people. So I myself do direct ministry at Delaware Hayes High School. And then Abigail and I kind of do some ministry stuff at Ohio Wesleyan, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. This fall, I started a new role with Young Life. Functionality, it looks pretty similar, but I'm the area director of Young Life in Delaware County. So helping oversee ministries here in Delaware, but then also other places in the county, the Olentangy schools and all that. So what's been cool is that I feel like God has provided so much in times where I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what's going on. It feels like such a picture of showing up in the midst of weakness. Can you throw that verse on there? 2 Corinthians. Yeah, we're going to look at 2 Corinthians 12, 9 through 10. I think that before I read this verse, when I think about ministry, I think God reminds me of this very frequently, where I often think of all the things that I can do for him, I can do for God's kingdom, all the things what I'm going to do. And I feel like time and time again, I just am like, wow, I can't do anything. I just am here to show up and see what God's going to do. And he's just invited me to put me in the seat to watch what he's doing. I feel like this semester especially, I felt more anxious and overwhelmed and insecure than ever before about things. And even in things I'm usually really comfortable in and hanging around students and it's been really challenging, but also really helpful of like, okay, what is my foundation actually built on? And it's brought me back to this verse. So 2 Corinthians 12, 9 through 10. This is Paul speaking here about Jesus. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. That's just been so challenging and helpful for me to just know, like, okay, we just have to depend on Christ in the midst of this. Another place where I feel like God is just providing is financially. So Young Life is completely locally funded. Something like, as I was coming on staff, there's all these kind of different factors kind of swirling, and couldn't even really tell, like, okay, where are we at financially? Where are we looking? As different people are on the payroll, all the things. If you want to know more about it, I can explain it more. But all that to say, it felt like if something doesn't happen in the next few months, we are going to be in a really tough spot. And I just got to this position, this is so weird, what the heck? And even just praying about it, God, I'm really anxious, and also, why is this our situation? And it just feels like he's provided exactly what we needed in his timing. And just over the past 2 months, we had a fundraiser a couple weeks ago, but kind of beyond that, and some random different things that are just all coming in at once. We've raised over $50,000 in the past 2 months. It's just definitely not been we could clap for that. It's just God is just showing up, and he's prompting people's hearts, and it's not okay, this is my strategy for how this is going to happen. It's no, God is just, he's doing it. And similar to what Kelly said earlier, it's I used to view it as this, oh, we just have to raise money to get to do what we want to do. But it's no, we're inviting people in to what God is doing in this ministry. Okay, so the next thing we're talking about is how God is just rescuing people. That it just feels like it's a really fun and interesting time. Just people are warm to they're warm to the gospel, they're warm to spirituality, teenagers, college students, all of it. It just feels like God is just really at work, and he's stirring up the hearts of people. So we'll talk about Ohio Wesleyan first. If you want to throw that picture on there. Hey, go Bishops. Abigail and I, over the past couple of years, have kind of tried to figure out, okay, what involvement on Ohio Wesleyan's campus can we be a part of? What does that look like? It used to start just trying to recruit Young Life leaders out of there. But then we slowly just saw okay, there's just a real need for a presence here on campus. And so it started last year, but Abigail and I started doing a Bible study with students on Tuesday nights. And it is kind of just grown into last year was kind of back and forth, didn't know what it was all going to look like. And this year it's just been kind of a consistent, stable thing of our Bible study, and also just the relationships just beyond that time as well. And so it's been fun. This semester, there's been probably 20 plus students that come usually on Tuesday nights. And then from there, we have had a kind of group of students that we've got to really build into. We took some students to fall weekend. So that's what this picture is. So Young Life runs a fall weekend at a Young Life property in Virginia, where we share the gospel over the course of a weekend. And we brought 8 students in September. We went there, and all 8 students felt like they took significant steps in their relationship with God. I think all of them would have said on the front end that they are Christians, but it was really cool. I feel like all of them, it was awesome to watch them process with them where they're at with Christ. And I think for them, Ohio Wesleyan is a really interesting place. That the culture is changing there, which is really cool. Just stories where we're hearing from students and just other ministries that's happening. It feels like there's even in the past 5 years, there's a larger welcomeness to what is happening, what God is doing on campus there. But they are faced with the challenge of living out their faith in college, which is a weird thing. And it's really cool to see them process that and figure out what that looks like for them. Abigail has been running a small group with some girls and discipling some girls, and it's just been really fun to see. Okay, now we're going to talk about Delaware Hayes. So this has been really fun. So started leading at Hayes almost 5 years ago now, and obviously COVID hit during that time, which was wild. But it's just fun. God is doing some really, really cool things there, and just really encouraged. There's just a lot of momentum in ministry right now. So some of the things that we do with Young Life is what we call Club and Campaigners. So Club is our weekly outreach event, which is we sing songs, play games, and a leader shares at the end a message about Jesus. And it's a little chaotic. It's a ton of fun. It's rowdy. But it really is a celebration of relationships, and it feels like this semester has been our strongest club season that we've had. Of just, it feels like students are really bringing their friends and rallying to be there, and that's kind of a result of so Campaigners is what we do on Wednesday nights, which is our large group guys and girls Bible study, and it feels like we have a core group of kids that are all in with following Jesus. And they're committed, and they're trying to figure out now, okay, what does it look like for me to pursue the friends around me? And that kind of, that reminds me of, we're going to look at 2 Timothy 2:2. I'll read it real quick. And the things you've heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others. So this is a verse that Paul is writing to Timothy. And we see these kind of generations of discipleship. And this is something that we've been walking with some of those core kids that I was talking about. Of okay, we are pouring into you, and then you now are going to many witnesses. And then from that, reliable people, and then teaching others. So all these different levels, and I feel like we get to see that now at Hayes. It's not just some of it is kids are coming to a fun social thing, and that's awesome, but it's really cool when it feels like students are truly trying to invest in their friends, and those people are investing in others. I feel like we've seen that play out this fall, and especially at Fall Weekend, which I'll talk about in a second, but this is kind of a quick generational thing that we've seen just in the past few months. So the 4 leaders on our team are myself, Jack, Megan, and Anna. Jack, Megan, and Anna are all volunteers that either go to or have gone to Ohio State. And they drive up 45 minutes from campus and come up here, and it's awesome. They're the best. And so then from there, the disciples that we are pouring into are Adam and Maisie, Lincoln, Scott, Sydney, and Zach. And then those disciples are pursuing their friends. Just to name a few, think of Luke, Connell, Preston, Cooper, Ella, Cash. And it's just been really, really fun to see. So Fall Weekend, we took 50 students from Hayes this year to Fall Weekend. Just last weekend. So up at Heartland Convention Center in Marengo, it's a chaotic, wild time shoved into 40 hours a weekend. We literally overrun Heartland. I feel bad for them. If we take over. But it's a blast. And if we go through the gospel throughout the weekend, similar to what we're talking about for Young Life College or with Ohio Wesleyan. And it was so encouraging to see so many students just in the matter of a few hours really open up about where they're at in their life, what's going on at home, what they're struggling with, why they see a need for Jesus in their life, what's going on, where they see the effects of sin in the world and in their own lives. And what's interesting is when we talk about sin, before we talk about the cross and how Jesus did something about it, for many students, it is a relief to them because they finally have an answer for what's going on in their life. And it's really, really encouraging to get to see students process that. So 50 students, what's fall weekend? 8 students made a verbal proclamation last weekend that they want to give their life to Christ. Just so encouraged that God is, and that just feels like, that is not just like a short, like, okay, they decided this just in 40 hours. It feels like God was prompting their hearts and they finally saw the answer. And obviously this is like now the real work begins of walking alongside them and showing them what it looks like to really give your life to Christ. But just encouraged and thankful once again that really I just get to sit in the seat and watch God work. Something really fun that I'll end with is the way that God is working in families right now. Similar to what Kelly was talking about, is that what our focus is high school students, right? But it feels like then God does amazing things with that and it impacts families. And there's 2 stories right now. I'm sure there's many others out there, honestly, of what's happening with this, but there's 2 stories where now parents are trying to figure out where they're at with their faith because of their students. And so Scott, who's a senior, he's been around here before. You might see him. He has red hair in that picture. Well, he always has red hair, but he's a senior at Hayes, and he met Jesus through Young Life his freshman year. His life is radically different. The way that he interacts with people, his friendships, even the way he views sports, like everything is different. And his mom has told me that very frequently. And she actually spoke at our fundraising banquet a couple weeks ago, and it was amazing because she was like, he didn't grow up in a Christian home. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. But I've seen the way my son, his life is different. And now, and she spoke so clearly about who he was in middle school and even just his struggles and feeling really depressed and COVID being a major role in all that. And then now she's like, everything has changed and I want to be a part of this. And so she's been going to church with him now and it's amazing. It's really cool to see the way that she's just talked about that. And what's funny is I asked her if she would share that at our banquet, and she said, I hate public speaking, but I feel so confident and so passionate about this that I will, I absolutely will. And so it was really cool to see her share that. Then I was hanging with a student the other day, Zach. Zach and Kyle, these brothers, are junior and senior. Once again, they did not grow up in a Christian home, but I was with Zach, and he got a text from his dad of what are your plans this weekend, blah, blah, blah. Also, can I go to church with you on Sunday? This is this really cool thing of he was texting that on Friday morning. He's already thinking about this and wants to be a part of it. And so, and just this story Zach's told me of the encounters that he's had with his family, talking about even just what he's learning or coming back from a fall weekend or something like that, getting to share about what God is doing. And so, ultimately, I feel in summary, God is just doing a lot, but it feels like it's so clear that it's Him. I'm just grateful to get to be a part of it. And so, grateful for Delco and that we get to partner in this thing together, and the way that we get to watch God rescue this city together. So thanks for listening. Am I bringing up Nathan now? Guys, give it up for Nathan Gordon.
Thanks. That's awesome. That's super encouraging to my heart. I feel like every time I hear people talk about what God is doing in high school students and college students, and I'm sure Anthony would just amen this, is that it feels like God's really moving a ton in that generation. There's a lot of momentum going on, and it feels like I didn't feel that when I was growing up, when I was in high school, when I was in college. I didn't see that kind of momentum, and so it's really exciting just to see how God is moving in the younger generations and what that means for the future. Before I start, do you just want to play that video real quick?
Delaware Dream Center is a hub of hope in the city of Delaware, Ohio, that exists to meet the needs of the families and seniors in our area. We do that through delivering groceries on Mondays and Tuesdays through our Adopt a Block program. On Saturdays, we pick those kids up, we bring them back to our building and spend time with them, going over Bible lessons, feeding them food, playing games, and having snacks. Throughout the summer, we do block parties where we set up bounce houses and grill out and pass out resources and have a good time with the community. We also pick up middle schoolers and high schoolers and do youth small groups with them. We have a free legal advice clinic where we can offer free legal advice to anybody in need. And we also have our annual holiday events where we make sure that people are taken care of throughout the holiday season. Every single week, we are consistently serving hundreds of people. And not only that, but we get to introduce to them the love and the hope of Jesus and share with them the truth of the gospel over and over and over again. It is because of your generosity that this is possible. So I truly mean it when I say thank you.
Cool. Yeah, so that video kind of explains a little bit about what we're doing and kind of puts a better, clearer picture to it because you can see the videos and stuff. But essentially what we're trying to do is meet first the physical needs of the community, and then after that the spiritual needs of the community. And there's several reasons we do that. One of them is that the Lord literally just commands us to meet people where they're at and to serve those in need. But we also have recognized that as we show people that we love them, that we care for them, and that we genuinely want to meet their needs because we see their worth and we see their value, that builds trust. And like what you and I know is that we want people to know Jesus because Jesus is the best thing for their life. But a lot of times people don't understand when you're sharing the gospel with them, when you're sharing who Jesus is with them, that you're not just trying to like make a convert, or you're not just trying to add somebody to your numbers, but that you genuinely do care about them. But if they can learn by the way that we serve them, by the way that we love them, that we genuinely do care about them, that we genuinely do want to help, that we are trying to meet these needs because we think they have worth, we think they have value, we think they're important, then people begin to trust us. Some of those walls come down, and as we share with them our testimony and the truth of what God has done in our lives and who Jesus is, then people they give us their ear and they begin to listen, and we begin to see transformation. And so yeah, that's kind of a little bit of what we're doing, and I just kind of wanted to share with you guys some stories about what's been going on in the city, and then also just personally how that's been impacting my life. I know that you guys are like on the back end of a missions month, and so one of my hopes for what I'm sharing here is that maybe this will just help encourage you guys to engage in mission the way that you feel led. So obviously I would love it if the way that you feel led was with the Dream Center. That'd be great. But any way that you feel led, any way the Holy Spirit is leading you, wherever He wants you to engage, I just think it's important that you engage. So, whether it's with LifeWise, whether it's with Young Life, whether it's with just your local neighborhood, like where you're at, however you can engage there, or in your school or in your office or whatever it looks like for you to truly be on mission and serve and engage in that way. I think the more that we really take that responsibility seriously and learn to live that out, the more we are able to genuinely see transformation in our communities. And so I think the best way to do that is to share just how I've experienced life change in that through how God is working in the Dream Center. I want to read John 12, 24 through 26 real quick. I told Anthony earlier this week, I was like, I'm not going to tell you what I'm talking about. You don't tell me what you're talking about. And if both of us have the Holy Spirit, then we'll just have similar themes. And if we don't, that means one of us probably doesn't have the Holy Spirit. But I think we do have similar themes, and so I'm excited about that. We're safe. It's okay. But the similar theme that I saw was it really is when you come to the end of yourself. I think that's what it is when you realize I don't have much to offer here, and you come to the end of yourself and you realize this is really hard, this is really difficult. I don't know what I'm doing, but I just want to follow what Jesus is doing. That you really see Him bring to life what He is doing, and you really learn to see His strength and His life and His abundance. And so John 12, 24 through 26 says, "Very truly I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds, and anyone who loves their life will lose it, while anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me. And where I am, my servant also will be. My Father will honor the one who serves me." And so what I see here is a theme of death that then leads to life, that then leads to following and walking with and serving Jesus. And so I just kind of want to talk about how I've experienced those themes in the Dream Center and share some stories with you in regards to that. I think one thing that's important to acknowledge from the offset is that while it can be an incredible and beautiful, wonderful thing, serving can also be a very painful thing, and it can be a very inconvenient thing, and it can be a very hard thing. And the reality is that's because what you're doing is you're engaging with people where they're at, and you're engaging with people in the pain and suffering that they're in, and you're giving up time that you might have to otherwise be doing other things to do that. And the ultimate example of that, obviously, is Jesus. And Anthony referenced, I think it's Philippians 2, right? Where it says that Jesus, he came from heaven, and he came to earth, and he was incarnated, and he took on the ultimate inconvenience, the ultimate pain to meet us where we're at and to be with us where we are. And on a very, very smaller microcosmic scale, like that is what you do when you serve people. I wrote that inconvenience and pain are an unavoidable part of life, and that the people that we serve are experiencing both of those realities all the time. But what if our ability to choose to take on some of their inconvenience and pain not only alleviates some of it for them, but creates a space for both of us to be able to encounter Jesus and his sacrificial love together, right? And so it's like, if you're able to like meet people where they are and take some of that on with them, if you're able to go and serve people and be with them in the midst of the difficulty and the struggle and the pain, even if it's hard, then your willingness to serve and sacrifice, while it might be difficult, also creates an environment and a space for both you and that person to encounter the sacrificial love of Jesus. And so I just want to share a couple stories with you about that. We had some volunteers a few years ago who were serving a woman. They were bringing groceries to her every single week, and she had a drug addiction that was pretty bad for a while, and it had really debilitated her. She had lost her kids, she had lost her job, and she was really at rock bottom. And so when our team was delivering groceries to her every single week, they would tell her about her worth and her value in Jesus, and they would encourage her, and they would tell her, hey, like, your life is worth more than what you're doing with it right now. Like, you are able to overcome this, and she encouraged her and be accountable for her, or to her. So like every week they'd be like, how are you doing? And after about 6 months, they were able to help her walk through being clean for 6 months. She was able to get her kids back. She was able to get a job and hold it, and they were rejoicing with her and encouraged together. And then after 6 months of doing that, she relapsed and went right back to square one. Lost her kids again, lost her job again. And the volunteers were heartbroken. And I remember them talking with me and being like, what even is the point? And like, why are we doing this? They were really frustrated. They were really sad. They were like, this just took 6 months of like really intentionally encouraging her and having like these long conversations with her. And it feels like it was for nothing. And so after a little bit of talking, they had kind of come to the point where they realized, no, like 6 months clean is huge, and that if she's willing to do it again, like who knows what would happen next. And who knows if they were willing to like press in, because what they were doing, what that moment was for them was a choice, right? It was like, all right, this is going to be more painful again. Like this is going to be difficult again to like re-engage and to start the process over with her and encourage her some more, knowing that she might relapse again. But they did. They decided to jump back into those conversations with her and just encourage her some more and be consistently present in her life when they would go visit her and deliver groceries to her. And they were at the block parties, being with her there and stuff like that. And I think now she is almost 2 years, I think, clean. And so that's just an example of like, that was hard for them. That was difficult for them. Obviously, it was way more difficult for her, right? It was way more painful for her. And so their willingness just to like be there with her and just kind of experience some of that with her, I think it was a very encouraging and helpful part of her journey. Another example, and this is kind of a silly example, but it was really cool how God was working in the midst of this. And this is another example of taking on a little bit of inconvenience to be able to serve and help people is does anybody like moving? Does anybody like really enjoy boxing up stuff and like moving to a new place? No? Okay, that's good. This story will make a lot more sense now. I hate moving. It's like my least favorite thing in the world. And I actually think that you have to like help people move, but I don't do it out of the goodness of my heart. I do it because I want to have people help me move when I move. And so whenever someone's like, hey, will you help me move? I'm just like, yeah, I guess. But you better help me move when it's time for me to move too. Anyways, there was a lady that we saw regularly, and she was in a situation where what is it when you have to, I think it was her liver that was failing. She had to go to the hospital and do that. Is it that dialysis? Yeah. So her liver had just started failing, and she was going and getting dialysis, and she was getting really weak, and at the same time, she was also getting evicted from her apartment. And it was a really shady deal too, because it was like, the apartment complex was just being shady. They wanted to basically flip the apartments, and it was new management. They wanted to up the price and stuff like that, and they were taking advantage of her situation. And so she reached out and she was like, I really need to move, but I'm not going to have a place to move into for like a few months or like a month, and I don't know what to do with like all my stuff, and I'm not strong enough to be able to move my stuff, and my family's not really around. And it was just like a whole mess of a situation. She was in a really rough spot. And I'm just going to be honest with you guys. First of all, that's not a service that we normally offer. Like, we typically don't offer moving service and like helping people move, because if we did, and anyone that was moving that heard about that would like be like, can you guys come help me move? And then we'd be in a really difficult situation. Second is, I hate moving, so when she asked me about that, like, I'm being dead serious. I know this sounds really shallow, but in the pit of my stomach, I was like, I do not want to help her move. Like, that just does not sound fun to me. But obviously, she was in a difficult situation, and she didn't really have any other options. And so we agreed to help her move, and the Lord just showed up in incredible ways. So, like, we got a team together, we got like a U-Haul, we packed up her truck, and she wasn't going to be able to move into the new apartment complex for a few weeks, so she was going to go live with her daughter for a little bit. But she didn't have nowhere to put her stuff, and she couldn't afford a storage unit. So I was like, all right, let's just go take your stuff to a storage unit and talk with the person. We'll see what the price is, see if maybe we can get like a discount or something because of your situation. And then I was like, maybe I was able to get permission for the drink center to kind of maybe front the bill for a little bit. And I think that she was also trying to figure out like if she could afford it for a little bit too. It was like we were trying to have some conversations, trying to figure out what we were gonna do. We get there, and we walk up to the storage unit, and the guy that we were talking to, we explained the situation to him, and he like looked at us, and he was like, "Well, actually, like I'm a Christian," and he was like, "And the Holy Spirit just told me that I'm supposed to let her have the storage unit for like a month for free if she needs it," and she felt so seen in that moment, right? She felt like in that moment that God just met her where she was at. I mean, she was mind blown. It was so beautiful just to see the excitement on her face. And then we were able to get her moved in, and that like really cemented a really cool relationship that we have with her now. And then her granddaughter, who also lives at the apartment complex that she's at now, and is one of our students on Saturdays, has just been, it's been really cool like how it impacted her granddaughter. So her granddaughter, I think, is 9. Like, she tells all her friends, like, yeah, the Dream Center helped my grandma move, and like she's really excited about it. And so her granddaughter was able to feel like seen and loved. I didn't even think it would have that kind of an impact on a kid, you know what I'm saying? But all that to say, sometimes it takes that willingness to engage when it is uncomfortable, or when it doesn't feel good, or when you know that it's not going to be easy. And my encouragement to you for that first part is like, all the fruit that was born out of those stories that I just told you, those came out of engaging when it was uncomfortable, or engaging when it was painful, or engaging when it was hard, or engaging when it was inconvenient. And just to read the first part of John 12:24-26, he says, "Unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it falls, it produces many seeds." And I think that that's so true. Like, sometimes we just have to be willing to let things die, or to let our flesh die, or let our desires die, and engage and knowing that what it will produce is going to be incredible and beautiful and abundant. And the encouraging thing is that on the other side of that is life. On the other side of that is abundance. On the other side of that is fruit. Choosing to press into the difficult moments will always produce a deep experience of life, joy, and abundance that doesn't come any other way. There are ways we will encounter God in these moments that are uniquely created by the level of dependence we have to have on Him when we are choosing to lay down our lives. So some of the coolest moments that I think I've ever experienced in my life have been a result of depending on God in some of the difficult moments that I've experienced. Like, just to be perfectly honest, working for the Dream Center and serving over the last 4 years, like, has been one of the hardest things I feel like I've ever had to do. And I've almost quit, like, more times than I can count. And it's really difficult. I'm sure Anthony probably feels the same way. Like working with people in situations that are difficult situations and walking people through things is hard. And but what I would not trade for anything is the way that I've experienced God and the way that I've seen Him move and show up that are like mind-blowing, and you're like, that was only God. Only God could do that. So that's my encouragement to you as well, as you guys are kind of finishing this missions month out, is like, if you're willing to engage, if you're willing to press in, if even when it doesn't feel convenient or it's hard, you will see God show up in incredible ways where you're like, that was only God. And here are just a couple cool stories and examples of that. So like last year, our fridge broke over here. That's like super important. We use that to refrigerate all of our food. We use that to keep the food good that we pass out every single week. So if it's broken, it's like we're kind of in trouble. And it broke on a Tuesday, and we weren't going to be able to get it fixed for several weeks. And so I was like really concerned about, like, what are we going to do? And to be honest, I hadn't prayed about it yet. I hadn't been like, Lord, please help us get this fridge fixed. I was just stressed out. I was anxious. I was like, this is going to throw off all of our programming. And so that happened on a Tuesday. On a Wednesday, I get a call from a guy, and he's like, hey, I have a fridge that someone just donated to me that I don't need. It's like an industrial fridge. Would you be interested in it? And I was like, are you serious? Would I be interested in it? I said, our fridge literally just broke yesterday. So that white fridge that's in there that's across from the glass fridge, like, that was just donated to us the day after the glass fridge broke, and it got us through a few weeks that we needed it to get us through so we could keep passing out groceries. And that's like, only God can do that, right? Another interesting and cool story was that there was a lady that we were serving, and she her car had broke down, and she needed her car to get to like doctor's appointments, and she was an older lady. She needed her car to get to the grocery store and like all the things that you need to do in life. And she was in a difficult situation, and so our team that was sending out or was going to her every single week to deliver food, they were like, let's just start praying that God would help get your car fixed and get you a new car. And then they also realized that their son-in-law was a mechanic, so they invited him to come and like work on the car as well and see if he could figure it out and fix it. And the shop that he worked for was like, hey, if you guys can figure out what's wrong, like, we'll just front the supplies for fixing the car. So they go, and he's looking at the car, and he's like, no, this car is totaled. There's no way I could possibly fix this car. It's just broken. So he goes back and he tells his boss, and in the meantime, this lady is just devastated. She's like, I can't afford a new car. I couldn't even afford to get this car fixed. I don't know what to do. So the team leaders that are visiting her every single week, delivering groceries to her, they're just like, well, let's just pray. Let's just keep praying that God provides for you. So they just keep praying. Meanwhile, the mechanic is having a conversation with the owner of the shop, and he's like, well, we actually have a couple cars just laying around right now. Let's just donate one of the cars to her. And so then they start asking me, like, can we do that? And I'm like, yeah, but don't say anything to her yet, because there's a whole process, and I don't want her to get excited and then just like fall through, right? And so we're all having this conversation. She doesn't know anything about this conversation. The team leaders just keep saying, like, let's just pray, and wait. And in the meantime, she's just like talking with them about her life, and they're talking about cars. And so she's like, you know what my favorite car I ever owned was? And she was like, I had this PT Cruiser that I just loved when I was younger. Why she loved a PT Cruiser, I couldn't tell you. But she loved it, and she was just going on and on and on about it. Lo and behold, the car that was being donated to her was a PT Cruiser. And so it was just like, it was an incredible example of God showing up in such a unique and specific and poignant way. All I have to say, like, when you choose to engage, when you choose to live on mission and and pursue what God is doing, then you do get to see him move in unique and incredible ways. And this is the last story I'll share real quick. And this is a cool story because it's a story where, the Drift Center and Delco were able to overlap in a really special way. And I think that was our heart and something that we've been praying about when we started sharing a space. And we get together like the first Monday of every month and just kind of pray over the space together, pray over each other's organizations. And our hope would be like, as we're sharing space together, that God would use that overlap to bless the community. And this is the most tangible way I think that we've seen that happen. So there was a gentleman that we were serving at a block party this summer. His name was Jerry, and he was living out of his van, and he was hanging out at the gazebo at the block party that we were hosting. And it was a hot day, so he was hanging out in the gazebo because he didn't want to be in his van. And he was like, "What are you guys doing?" So we explained to him about the block party, and he asked our coordinators of that event. He said, "Can I hang out with you guys and participate in the block party?" And we're like, "Absolutely." And he's like, "Can I serve?" And we said, "Sure." So I can't remember exactly what he did, but he did a great job. Like we gave him a blue shirt, and he just like keyed in, and he was serving. And like, you never know when someone just asks you like out of the blue if they can serve, if they're really gonna serve. But I mean, he really was serving. Like he was working hard, and someone had figured out while he was serving that he was in some legal trouble and that he needed some help with some stuff, and that was part of the reason that he was living out of his van. And so that week, that Thursday, we actually had our legal advice clinic. So we were able to invite him to come to the legal advice clinic. So he comes on Thursday, hangs out with some of the lawyers, talks to them for like 45 minutes, and he asked me on his way out, he was like, "Is this a church?" And I was like, "Well, like, we're not a church." But I was like, "There is a church that meets here on Sundays within walking distance of you. Like, why don't you come check it out?" And so he was like, "Yeah, I think I'll do that." And so he came on Sunday, and I guess there was a minister from the Christian Missionary Alliance here, is this right? Who was like taking a week off, right? So he's from another church, and he was here taking a week off, just like trying to relax and not do ministry and just enjoy church. And ends up in a conversation with this guy for like 40 minutes? Was it a while? Yeah, for like 40 minutes. He ends up in a conversation with this guy. And like there was not this like big, crazy, powerful moment that we're aware of, but he leaves the conversation, leaves the church, and a few weeks later, one of our volunteers runs into him, and he's sharing with our volunteer that he had given his life to the Lord at that service, and that he had begun walking with Jesus, and he was super excited to talk about his faith. And then a few weeks after that, he passed away, unfortunately. And so, that was obviously heartbreaking. But God just lined up his steps right before the end of his life so that he was able to experience the love of God. He was able to get into a community. He was able to have a conversation with a guy that wasn't even supposed to be here. He was able to give his life to Christ. And it was just a beautiful experience of the intentionality and the love of God, even in the midst of something that ended up being tragic. And so then basically the verse ends saying this. It says, "Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, my servants also will be." What's up, buddy? It says, "Where I am, my servants also will be. My Father will honor the one who serves me." And what I'll say is that some of the places that I've experienced the presence of God most richly and most abundantly have been in moments like that of serving and depending on Jesus. And it says, "My Father will honor the one who serves me." And I've really experienced that. And I bet Anthony would tell you that he's really, really experienced that. I bet Jordan and Stephen would tell you they've really, really experienced that. Is that like just when you choose to lean in, when you choose to be intentional, God blesses that and God honors that. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean it's going to always be fun. But man, like it's so much more worth it. It's so much more powerful. It's so much more powerful. It's so much more meaningful than just like having an easy fun life. And so that's what I would encourage you guys with today is just like engage, whatever it looks like, however the Holy Spirit leads you, whatever, like as life-wise and young life and Dream Center up here today, maybe something was like pricked in your heart and the Holy Spirit was like pulling you into a moment, or maybe there's something else outside of those three organizations that God has been pulling you to and you've been thinking about, like, I don't know if I want to do that yet, I don't know if I want to commit to that. maybe it's a person at work that God has been like pulling you to. Maybe it's a person at school that God has been pulling you to. But I would just encourage you, engage in the mission, because you will not regret it. Like I think you might have moments where you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, but overall, I think you will not regret it. So that's all I got.